Hey y'all, how's it going? The chickens are quiet, so I thought I'd do a video real quick. Just finished work, I got a little bit of time, we're gonna knock a video out. The first thing, we're gonna have 3 or 4 stories here, and they're all really good. The last one is awesome. It is so cool, you're not gonna believe it, but you're gonna believe it. But the first one is, I'm just gonna do it right here. My friend Jamie, she lives in West Tennessee. She sends me a message now and then on Facebook Messenger, and she shares some cool stuff with me. And she sent me a link to an article from the Nashville Tennessean. It's a newspaper. This issue was published on Sunday morning, July the 12th, 1953. The title of the article is "Coon Dog Falls Victim of Prowling ARP Ape." The story originated in Ripley, Tennessee. That's in West Tennessee, pretty close to the Mississippi River. This image that I'm looking at on my screen is kind of blurry, so if I stumble over my words, just ignore that, because it's hard to read, but the story is awesome. Nobody turned his back on the dark here last night after the report that a large beast had killed a husky 80-pound coon dog early yesterday with one blow. Cautious residents remained on the alert for a large, shaggy beast with an ape-like shuffle, which apparently had upset the 4th household in 2 weeks. It was first seen at Arp, Tennessee, near here. The victim yesterday was a black coon dog known to be unusually truculent, owned by Paul Hip of the Ashport community 14 miles east of Ripley. Hip lives on Highway 19. Hip said he was awakened about 2 a.m. by the dogs barking and growling in front of the house. He said they sounded as if they were snapping and struggling with something. Hip grabbed his .410 gauge shotgun and ran out on the porch. He saw the dog lying on the roadside and heard Old Red tearing through a nearby field of hip-high cotton. He could not see what the dog was chasing. Hip said he listened to the chase a long time and determined by the dog's baying that it had chased the animal into the bottomlands of the lower Forkadere River. At daylight, he went out to examine the dead dog and found that he had been killed by one huge gash in his side. Shortly afterward, Old Red returned home with his hide torn in several places. Hip's home is about 6 miles east of Arp, where the beast was first seen slowly walking up the gravel driveway of a home. The beast was later seen by another resident of Arp, who shot at it and later discovered that it had made tracks somewhat like a bear. Hip's home is 8 miles north of Mack Community, where the beast tore out 2 window screens in a tenant farmer's home and then scratched on the tin roofing which had been put over the windows. On this occasion, it was tracked to a bluff after leaving a trail which indicated it had walked, sometimes on all fours and sometimes upright like a man. It left tracks which looked like bear's tracks, investigators said. That is an article in the Nashville Tennessean from July 12, 1953. Okay, there are so many similarities to what we're reading from 1953 that apply today. Now, I'm guaranteeing you that these people close to Ripley, Tennessee, over in West Tennessee, it's almost flat as a pancake over there in the West Tennessee Delta, had even heard of Bigfoot. I guarantee you in 1953 the topic had never come up. Here we have a story that is identifying this animal. It's not a bear. It's not a pig. It's a Bigfoot. It's a hairy beast that's roaming around and it's looking for something. And I just think it's so interesting, and I love these old stories. Again, y'all have heard me say that a dozen times, but hey, if you guys come across any more of these articles and you'd like to hear them on the channel, or you'd like me to share them with all of our friends on this channel, just email those to me or send me a link. And I just love these things. These old reports are awesome. All right, let's move on to the next story. Thanks, Jamie, for sending that. You're awful sweet to do that. Thank you, ma'am. Here's another Bigfoot encounter it's not a direct, in-your-face type encounter. But if this was me, it would have just scared the crap out of me. I think it's really cool. The writer wants to remain anonymous. One evening, Edwin was out in the golf cart with his dog. They had been hog hunting, and the daylight was fast fading. They were trying to follow the trail of a hog that had been shot, which had immediately disappeared into the thick woods and underbrush. Edwin had no flashlight, and so he turned around to go back to the house before it got too dark. He had just crossed the road at the back end of the lake, and it was now dark. He slowed the cart and then stopped because the road was narrow and overgrown. Edwin jumped down to try to discern where the road went. He was looking for the tracks left by the cart. Suddenly it became eerily still, and the silence was, as he put it, deafening. His dog became very nervous, and the hair was standing up. The dog began to bark, but suddenly stopped and tucked his tail when a very loud growling roar boomed out behind them. Then there was a loud splash. Edwin and his dog wasted no time, but jumped back in the cart and tore off through the woods and finally found a well-used portion of the road back to the house. I commented that maybe it was a big alligator. Edwin said maybe, but that was a very loud roar, the likes of which he had never heard before. The next day, he met one of the neighbors, Pete, out at Pete's house. Edwin struck up a conversation and later brought up the subject of Bigfoot, and he asked if Pete had ever experienced something like that. Pete's friendly mood changed as he said there was no such thing, but Edwin felt that he was withholding something. Pete brushed him off and said he had errands to do and left. The next incident happened down behind the dam where it was swampy and the underbrush was thick. David, Edwin's younger brother, had just shot a wild hog and was trailing it. He finally came upon the hog, which was now dead. The light was quickly fading, and the hog had wedged itself deep under a mass of very thick briars. David decided he would come back in the morning when he would be able to see better and extract the carcass. When he arrived, he was shocked to find that something had dragged the hog out into the open. The hog was laying on its back, and it had been butchered. That is, the carcass had been slit open from the crotch to the head, and the entrails were nowhere to be seen. The cut was very straight and neat, as if it had been done with a knife. He had a camera and took a picture of the hog, but he thinks the photo may have been accidentally deleted. I asked him if it was an animal such as a coyote which had dragged the hog out. He said no, because the incision was way too neat. If it was an animal, it would have begun consuming the carcass. Could it have been another hunter who had trespassed on the property and found the hog? No, as there were no tracks and the hog was in the middle of the briars. The fence was down, but he was very certain it was not someone on the property. The ground is very soft back there, but absolutely no tracks other than his and the dead hogs were there. He had to go back to the house to get something, and upon returning, the hog carcass was gone. Again, there were no tracks except for the blood from the hog. Very eerie, and he could feel the hair on the back of his neck tingle and the sensation of being watched while he was there. That is a cool story. It's not a direct encounter, but it's pretty good evidence that something big was stealing the pig. We've got a couple of stories here tonight where this first one is where a pig gets stolen, and then the next one, you're going to find out how a deer gets grabbed, and it is unbelievable. But back to this story, I think two things kind of confuse me. One, how, if it was a Bigfoot, maybe a dog man, how do they make an incision that clean? I don't know. I cannot imagine how any kind of animal could crudely make an incision that clean. What do you guys think? You have an opinion? And then the fact that there's no tracks anywhere, other than what they would expect to be there. So if it was a Bigfoot or a dog man, you would think there would be some pretty deep tracks, especially down in that swampy area that he was talking about. Either way, the story is is hair raising, and it's pretty awesome. And I really appreciate you sending it in. Thanks, buddy. This last story is so good. It is. I remember when I read it last week, I thought, oh, this is awesome. And I couldn't wait to get it on the channel. But I know that most of you have probably seen the first Jurassic Park movie. And if you remember, there towards the end, the velociraptors get out. You know, they hunt in packs. Or at least the movie portrayed them hunting in packs. One velociraptor will get the attention of the prey, kind of freeze it, where it won't move or whatever, and another velociraptor will flank it and attack the prey and take it down. And there aren't any animals that I know of, maybe lions, that use that, but they don't, that use that tactic, but they don't use it that precisely. In other words, lions will attack from different angles. You know, they're one of the few pack hunters. Wolves are pack hunters. They just run their prey down until they wear them out, and then they bring it down and kill it. But so there's not many animals that actually do this. Of course, the velociraptors were shown to do this in Jurassic Park. But anyway, enough of that said. The writer wants to be anonymous, and that's fine. He writes, "Hello, I really enjoy your YouTube channel. If you could keep my name private, I would sure appreciate it. This encounter takes place in 2003 in November during bow season. I had already scouted my hunting area and had my tree stand in place. I arrived in the woods about 5:30 a.m. It was still dark when I got into my tree stand. It was a cool autumn morning. I heard movement off to my left, and a lone small buck appeared. I just let him go. I wanted a larger deer. After that morning passed with no more activity, I was getting hungry, so I opened a granola bar and quietly ate it. I started to wonder if maybe I should have taken that buck. Well, the afternoon passed and the sun was getting low, and I was just about to pack it in when I heard the sound of leaves crunching in a pattern of a large four-legged animal. I raised my crossbow and waited. In no time, a nice 8-point buck stepped into view, and I lined him up in the crosshairs and fired. He jumped as the bolt passed through him and ran off back in the direction he had come from. I climbed down from my stand and stretched my legs and looked in the direction that he went. I thought for sure I'd have to follow the blood trail, but there, about 50 yards away, there he lay dead. So I leaned my crossbow up against the tree, and I got my field dressing knife ready. I usually hang my deer up in a nearby tree to make skinning easier, but I had forgotten my rope, so I'd have to do this on the ground. I got into my work as quickly as possible because sunset was close and I wasn't going to be fun dragging this buck out. Well, I was almost done and ready to cut the last of the intestines loose. Now I'm straddling this deer carcass and his head is behind me and I'm covered in blood up to my elbows, just to give you a mental picture. I catch movement out of the corner of my eye at about 11 o'clock, and so I stop and straighten up and I look in the direction. Nothing but trees, maybe it was just a raccoon, and so I got back to work. Then I heard a grunt like a pig would make, but there were no wild pigs around here. I looked up in that direction, and to my amazement, about 20 yards in front of me, a Bigfoot is peeking around a tree at me. He just keeps looking at me and me at him for about what feels like minutes, but maybe only a few seconds. I'm thinking, what you're seeing is real. And then I'm thinking, I'm covered in deer blood, standing over a dead deer with only my skinning knife. So I stepped off from over the deer, and he stepped out from behind the tree he was peeking around. Yes, it was a he, and he was tall and a dirty cinnamon color. His eyes were black as coal, but you could kind of see the red around his eyes, and around the outside of his skin was a dark gray. His shoulders were wide, and he really had no neck. I have kind of been into Bigfoot, so I would say it looked like a type 1 patty. He sniffed the air real hard, and his hands closed into fists. I'm just praying that he only wants this deer and not me, too. Next, this all happens in about 20 seconds, but it feels like I'm in slow motion. He steps forward to me, and now he's about 10 yards, and then he takes another big smell of the air. his lips tighten and his eyes narrow. He then smacked the ground with his fist and he roared at me. At that moment, I was helpless to move and my knees went weak. I'm not sure if this is that infrasound that other researchers talk about or not. I stumbled to my left and I looked down quickly as not to stumble onto the deer, but the deer was gone. I looked back up, half expecting the Bigfoot to be on me. He was, to my amazement, jogging away from me. I turned to the deer carcass and it's gone, and I looked back towards him and he is gone. So as you can guess, when he roared, the second Bigfoot took that opportunity to get the deer and run. This was a very humbling experience, and it took me a while to hunt again, and I won't hunt that area anymore. Thanks for letting me tell my story. It helps to know that you don't judge. God bless and thanks again. No, I don't judge, and I don't think any of our listeners judge. And I'm telling you, this story makes perfect sense. Because, man, these things are smart. They're not stupid. They're smart. And it's like I heard some guys on a podcast, not too long ago, say that Bigfoot watches us and we are his entertainment. Some people claim they're in the woods and they can go unseen or so blended into their environment that we can't see them, and they just watch us and we are their entertainment. So they've watched hunters and they know what hunters do, and they know how people react to sounds and movement and noise, and they use that to their advantage and got that deer. They didn't just get the deer, they got him already field dressed out, so all they got to do is just cook him. I don't think Bigfoot cooks them, but you get the point. I mean, they got a free deer already dressed out. I just thought that was a great story, and I'm so thankful that the man sent it to me. And no, we don't judge. Nobody here judges. We just love these stories. So I think that's going to do it for this video, and I guess we'll see you guys on the next one. I really appreciate you. Thanks.